Guys, that's right. Watch out. You guys who think you got it all together. Smart Alex, Weisenheimers. There's lots of phrases. Also, the Magi. We are lumping into that today as we take a look at another part of the Christmas story, looking through the lens of Tim Keller's book, Hidden Christmas. Taste and see that the Lord is good. Ice cream is sweet. Jesus is sweeter. Sweet Jesus.
Oh, on top of that, I got an ice cream maker for Christmas.
You got an ice cream maker for Christmas.
I already had one, but I got another one.
Well, where is it, man? You didn't tell me that.
I don't have the ingredients.
We actually have ice cream salt in the pantry here.
This one doesn't need all that because you put the tub where you put the ingredients, you put that in the freezer. That's one hurdle. Can I fit it in the freezer? Because usually, they're tall and cylindrical. But this one, I guess the design more flat.
Okay.
So, hopefully I can find some place. Because you have to actually put it in there for 6 to 12 hours or so many hours. You want it cold when you start. And you put the stuff in it. The thing also keeps it cold, but, they don't want it room temperature.
And you said you had nothing to talk about.
Yeah. You're right.
You're holding out on me with this ice cream. Goodness gracious. That's, well, now I got to come over and have some ice cream.
Yeah.
Or you bring it here for the next time.
Can put it in your freezer, your ice cream freezer.
I do have a freezer in my office for a reason. But, yeah, I don't know. Is there a connection between ice cream and wise guys? Or is that a reach?
That's a reach.
All right.
We could probably make one, but.
Well, then what do you got out of Tim Keller's Hidden Christmas?
I don't know. Did you want to read the story first?
Yes, that would be good. We actually just read it this morning. I think that's why it was so easy to. This was something a lot of churches probably read today, or at least a piece of this. If not, they'll read it soon with Epiphany. But Matthew chapter 2. Now, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, saying, Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him. When Herod the king heard this, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. And assembling all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. They told him, In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it is written by the prophet, And you, O Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For from you shall come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel. When Herod summoned the wise men secretly and ascertained from them what time the star had appeared, and he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, Go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word, that I too may come and worship him. After listening to the king, they went on their way, and behold, the star that they had seen when it rose went before them until it came to rest over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced exceedingly with great joy. And going into the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they fell down and worshipped him. Then, opening their treasures, they offered him gifts, gold, and frankincense, and myrrh. And being warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they departed to their own country by another way. Now when they had departed, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream, and said, Rise, take the child and his mother, and flee to Egypt, and remain there until I tell you, for Herod is about to search for the child to destroy him. And he rose and took the child and his mother by night, and departed to Egypt, and remained there until the death of Herod. This was to fulfill what the Lord had spoken by the prophet, Out of Egypt I called my son. Then Herod, when he saw that he had been tricked by these wise men, became furious, and he sent and killed all the male children in Bethlehem and in all that region who were 2 years old or under, according to the time he had ascertained from the wise men. Then was fulfilled what was spoken by the prophet Jeremiah. A voice was heard in Ramah, weeping and loud lamentation, Rachel weeping for her children. She refused to be comforted, because they are no more. The word of the Lord. Very unpleasant story in many ways. But what does Mr. TK have for us? What are you gleaning from that?
Well, he talked about the brutality of the king, which I guess is mentioned, discussed here. So he also talked about the fact that the wise men coming from another country showing up somewhat out of the blue, was as you read, it was disturbing. Mm-hmm. He was disturbed, and so was all of Jerusalem, which I really guess never really caught before reading this. I know he was disturbed, but I missed the all Jerusalem with him. It was those kind of things.
Yeah, it's very obvious throughout the story that these guys are not really all that wise. And that's the wise guy comment at the beginning. I mean, it's just, it defies the most obvious sort of political understanding of the way kings and kingdoms and all these things work. Like, why would you go to the current king and ask about the king that's supposed to succeed them?
Especially if you're coming from another country that is not under the domain of that king, right?
Yeah, depending on where exactly these guys came from, they probably did not come from a Roman territory. And they are causing sort of a political incident, like it's very different today with the, sort of democratic republic type process where we elect leaders, and, much of the world operates this way. Not all of it, but it doesn't hit the same. But when you're king, as long as no one else steals it from you, that makes the world a very different place.
It'd be like, I guess, us U.S. showing up in North Korea to Kim Jong-un and said, "Oh, where's your new?
Where's the guy who's going to follow you next month? Or next decade or whatever." Yeah, I'm pretty sure that would upset him.
Yeah, he probably pretty much have, if he wasn't in agreement to that, he'd probably have him killed.
And that's actually,
especially if it wasn't a child of his, or some family member.
Well, even if it was, Herod killed his own sons, his own wife at one point, and so he is dead set on staying in power. And then these knuckleheads show up and are like, "Hey, can you tell me where the next guy is?" Idiots. So,
but they were wise in the astronomical events.
Yeah, well,
they were learned people.
Maybe. There's some interesting stuff. Well, first of all, it's like, "Behold, wise men from the east come to Jerusalem." Whoa. Like, that's behold. Like, holy cow, could you believe it that these guys from the east? And all right, let's get at the word wise men here. What is that word actually? It's not wise. That's not what it necessarily means, like you're just wise. It's more like magi. Just think, it's the word origin may be similar to like magic, somebody who is into not the kinds of spiritual activity that a Jew in the first century should be.
Right.
I mean, they're offensive in that sense too. These are also the kinds of people that, probably, like, if you look back in the Old Testament, Daniel is in Babylon and he's in exile with the rest of Israel, or maybe not all of it, but he gets roped into this whole discerning of a dream thing because the king is asking his wise men, his magi, his magistrates, his whatever, which maybe there's a connection there. I don't know. Those two words are similar. And they can't figure it out. They don't have an answer. They don't have an interpretation of the dream. And so Daniel, I think he kind of like raises his hands and is like, oh, we're all going to be killed? Why? Oh, well, let me talk to God. And he's the one who can give interpretations to dreams, and we'll see what he says. And then all of a sudden, Daniel becomes, sort of moves up the ranks and becomes an influential person in a foreign empire, a foreign territory. So it's not that they're stupid. They are sort of learned in a sense, but not necessarily, like, they don't have 6 doctorates, and 10 master's degrees, or like, hey, look at all the stuff we know. It does seem to be sort of like reading the tea leaves. Like, how do you help your ruler to stay on the good side of the gods, kind of. And they show up. Like, behold, like, holy cow, would you look at that? Wise men from the east, Magi from the east come to Jerusalem. Who let these people know? And actually, there's a theory. We don't know how true it is or isn't, but that whole story of the exile in the Old Testament, where the people of Israel are taken out, it's punishment from God. The prophets are very clear about that they have really neglected their first love. They've abandoned God for all these other gods, and he's mad at them, and so he's going to send them into exile. They're going to be conquered. They are, and Daniel's there, and he rises up. He has favor with God, and then ultimately that spills over to favor with these other rulers. And then there's the, 600-700 years later, there's this event, and somehow these guys have a clue. Maybe there's a connection. Like, maybe God orchestrated all of this, and Daniel's insights into the scriptures and the prophecies of old sort of are brought to bear in this one moment. If that is true, and even if it's not, it actually says something about these guys, that they aren't so wise that they figured it out on their own. God had to tell them. Right? Mm-hmm. God had to tell them somehow, and then give them the sign, the star, and intrigue them and get their attention, and then help somehow to convey that this was a king, a new king. So, sounded like you were going to jump in with something.
It was like, when you were saying that, it was like, so if they didn't have the connection to Israel, how would they have known an astrological sign, astronomical sign had anything to do with a country so far away? So it was either, I guess it's either like you just said, was that, God, there's a lot of dreams going on in these first few verses of Matthew. So, maybe he spoke to him in a dream, or maybe it was, the work from Daniel when he was there. Yeah, it's interesting. Because why would they? And then why, if they lived in a kingdom, did their own king send them? But then some terms they call them kings, 3 kings or something too. So I don't. They're right. They're.
Yeah, well, they're not kings. I mean, I think that's pretty well established. Uh, Wiseman is suspect.
The unwise,
Magi, yeah. Well,
the unwise men.
again, they know all this stuff, and yet they go to the king and they ask, like, what dummies? Unless they were just so desperate to find this king, and they assumed that this was the only place that would know. Which, irony of ironies, I think you mentioned this before we got started. There were people that knew, right? So they're asking, and then Herod was like, "Okay, what are we talking about?" He gets his wise men, his priests and scribes and whatever, and they say, "Oh, Bethlehem,
That's where
here's this prophecy." Wait a sec. So how come you weren't saying anything about this? How come you weren't looking for it? How come you weren't paying attention? Because we didn't want you to be here. Right? I mean, they were probably smart in that sense, wise, so to speak. But the wisest thing they do is to go back a different way. And then that's not even wise because, like you said, all the dreams, right?
Mhm.
They're, where's that verse?
Yeah, there were two dreams. They had it.
And being warned in a dream in verse 12 not to return to Herod, they departed to their own country by another way. So even that they couldn't figure out. Like they would have gone back and said, "Oh yeah, we found him. He's at this beautiful little place right here there." Like, you knuckleheads. You guys are not that smart. Really not. But really that's kind of the point. Just like the point, similar, I guess, maybe to the point with the shepherds, that God chose these weak, smelly, foolish things to shame the wise and the strong.
Mhm.
1 Corinthians 1. And here he is again using foreign, like offensively, probably opposed in some way politically to Israel and the Romans and all that kind of stuff, using this foreign influence, having them show up, them getting it, and them bowing down and worshiping, right? I mean, that's what they say. They rejoiced exceedingly with great joy. Like, that's like a big, big, big joy. That's what it's trying to communicate there. Like, this was not just like, oh, neat, check it out. It's like,
We saw the star. We came over here, and oh yeah, there's a
there
baby
is.
born.
All
Oh.
right, let's go home. Like,
Yeah.
no, they rejoiced exceedingly with great joy, right? That's the way they're trying to drive home the point. It's a little clumsy language, the way it sounds. This is verse 10. When they saw the star, they rejoiced exceedingly with great joy. Like, it seems very like, what, do we need really to say that? Yeah, they're driving this home. They were super stoked that this happened, that they found the child. And going into the house, they saw the child, which it's the house, not
Right.
the stable or the animal area, right? And they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they fell down and worshiped him. Worship, right? This was not just some human king. They were recognizing something divine about this child.
Yeah, whether it was come from a dream that got them, or a message from God that a savior was being born, or if it was a message from God through Daniel, one way or another, they knew
Yeah.
that this was important enough to pack expensive gifts,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because
Yeah.
I guess back in those days, you travel, and you're at a risk of bandits and things, So
They were clearly prepared somehow for this. But it reminds us of something that Jesus will later say to Peter and his disciples. He said, who do people say that I am? and John the Baptist, Elijah, blah 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 blah. Who do you say that I am? And Peter responds in a big moment, a good moment, which were rare for Peter. You are the Christ, the Son of the living God. It's in Matthew 16. And what does Jesus say? I mean, he pats him on the back. Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah. For flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father in heaven. Right. So when Peter gets it wrong, oh, Peter, you're such an idiot. What's wrong with you? When he gets it right, it's you don't get credit. God gets credit. And that's ultimately what we got to do here, is that we don't hold up the wise men and, wise men still seek him, right? Like that sentiment. It's not wrong. It's, I would say, true. But what is also true is that wise in human terms, those people don't seek him. Typically not. It's God who ultimately reveals. It's God who ultimately provides the path for us. He provides the star. He provides the information from Daniel. He provides all of these things that lead up to this moment. And he gets the glory because he's the one orchestrating the events of history to bring about whatever it is that he ultimately has in mind. And obviously we know that that's good. We know that it has to do with this child growing and going to a cross and rising again from the dead, ascending to heaven to sit at his right hand, and then to come again to redeem and restore all of creation. We know that's part of the plan, but we don't know the minute details of each and every step along the way. And so he's the one who gets the glory. He's the one who gets the credit. He's the one who is ultimately bringing things together in some way that is beyond our understanding. So let's not give him too much credit. Don't give me too much credit either, or you, or TK. So is that it? That's all you got out of there, or?
Well, I thought it was interesting also, when of course, then Herod, when the wise men sneak out and he's upset about that, he said, okay, well, then I'm going to kill all these children 2 years and younger, which kind of gives you a time frame, right? That Jesus was probably 2 years or younger, right? He wasn't just born.
Yeah, they don't visit the stable, which it probably wasn't actually stable in the way that we've imagined it, but a place where the animals are for sure.
Right.
It wasn't there.
But I find it just ironic too, like we were saying earlier, he called the priest of the people, which you would assume that meant the Jewish priest, to tell them where Jesus or the Messiah was to be born. He was to be born in Bethlehem. Okay, so they knew that. And then Herod kills all the male children from Bethlehem, born. Jesus would have been the only man his age from Bethlehem. So the whole time when they're trying to question who he was, you think if they would have sent someone to do somewhat of I'm guessing, there probably wasn't birth certificates and all the documents, like you couldn't go to the courthouse and find all that maybe. I don't know how all that worked back then, but they could have probably done some asking of people, well, who is this? And when, whatever, how old is he? And blah, blah, blah. And they could have put him back to Bethlehem. And he's like, well, he would have been the only, at least, in the ballpark. Is this the guy that the Magi came and visited and almost caused an, international incident? And, maybe they were concerned. They were troubled also.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just, it all fits together, and it makes me wonder things. A lot of things.
Well,
How willfully,
willfully ignorant people are.
how willfully ignorant they were, about him and the whole situation, when it's obvious that they know where he's to be born. There were events. I mean, something like these things, of course, it had been 30-ish years from when that happened to when, they did come back before that from Egypt, but I don't know. It's just a lot. Yeah, it's like you said, the way God weaves it.
Well, there's just, sorry.
Yeah, it's just, it can't be haphazard. It can't just be random.
No. And it's just the willful ignorance of people, of us even. Here we are, we're Christians talking about the Bible and Jesus and all that kind of stuff. And even we have areas of sort of willful ignorance where we'd really rather not think about certain aspects of our flaws, our whatever, right? I mean, there's just a lot of things that we don't spend a lot of time thinking about on purpose.
The inconvenient truths.
Inconvenient truths. Thank you, Al Gore. Yeah.
Yeah.
It becomes pretty obvious for Jesus as he begins his ministry. It becomes very obvious that the people that are opposed to him are opposed to him because of what he's saying and what he's doing and what he represents and the threat that is to their kingdom. Right? Herod is, and I think actually it comes out a little bit in the book that, Herod is really just a picture of us.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want another king. We are the kings. We're the king of our own castle. We're the king of our own lives, our own universe. We're the captain of our souls. We're, all these things.
To quote Seinfeld, master of our domains.
Master of our domains. Or
Probably
so
shouldn't have
we
went
think.
there. Probably shouldn't have went there, but
Or so we think, right? And then here comes this Jesus, and he says, "No, you're not."
Yeah, you're pretty clueless.
And just think about how people resist God, and then it ends up becoming part of the plan anyway. Like Jesus himself goes to the cross. Satan thought this would be the end. And it turned out to be the perfect fulfillment. Like it was literally what God was orchestrating. You are not the king of your own life, even if you think you are, even if it looks like it, even if it feels like it from time to time.
And someone I listened to recently said that, and it might have been Michael Heiser, that if Satan would have known that killing Jesus was really the plan, he wouldn't have done it. He would have done something. He probably would have tried something else, right?
Mm.
So that's why some of this is probably so complex. The manner, and then the prophecies, they're sprinkled here and there, and they talk about certain things, but unless you see it from hindsight, I mean, they know generally he was going to be born in Bethlehem, but the whole plan wasn't.
It's throwing off the enemy a little bit. You're saying,
yeah, that's what I think. That was Michael Heiser that I was listening to that suggested that he thinks that even Satan wasn't quite aware of that.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense. Why God might allow him to have a few victories here and there, to keep the plan from being revealed, to make sure that what actually needs to happen happens. And I mean, it's really easy for us to sit back and just, oh yeah, well they'll be fine. Yeah, all those little boys were killed, and their parents and all the grief and whatever. That they'll be fine. God's going to fix it in the end, but not yet. You know. Of course, that is the hope that God allows Satan to have these small victories for the sake of the larger victory, the final victory, right? If Jesus dies before his time, then they die forever. Whether they died at 2, 1, 6 days, or 150 years old, without Jesus, they stay dead. With Jesus, life eternal, right? So this is like the view of, kids versus adults, right? I mean, kids are very like right now, what's happening now? What am I going to get now? Wait, I want it now. And, as parents, our job is to usually, hey, let's think a little bit longer term about this. And eventually we get there, as adults. Well, if you don't, it's pretty miserable adulthood, or at least you're making somebody else miserable. And so God has infinitely greater view of everything, right? Infinitely longer view of everything compared to us, his children, who look like adults and act like adults and smell like adults and all these other things. But in the end, we're still just kids.
Right.
And so he knows that this unfolding tragedy is a temporary, unpleasant, evil moment that is going to allow for the unfolding of a far greater good. And we know that he's good because he doesn't spare himself of anything. Right? God doesn't just sit up in heaven and go, oh, they'll be fine. We'll fix it later. Like, oh, stop crying, because he doesn't do that. He sends his son into the world to be in danger himself, right? And rescues him, but only to allow him to suffer and die later so that these kids and everyone they know and everyone they love and everyone on earth has a path to living forever, to overcoming death and the grave, the power of sin and Satan. And so it's not a pleasant story at all, but it is, again, this little baby is a threat. How is that possible? How is that possible? Jesus is a threat. And there are countries that ban Christianity because that's the only way they stay in control. It's like where there are Christians, there is something about the faith, the Christian faith. It sort of immunizes or inoculates people against tyranny, sort of like, or is their defense against tyranny? Like they can handle it and they can push back against it and they don't care because Jesus is going to raise me from the dead. They're unstoppable. And so tyrants around the world and throughout history have often banned Christianity. It's far less easy to control people with Christianity.
Yeah, I think it's Soviet Union discovered that at some point. That's one of the reasons why they had banned it, because they couldn't overcome the Christians.
Of course, the irony is that it never worked. It only made it more powerful. Like, think of a movement where the more you snuff it out, the stronger it becomes. I do think it's true of tyranny in general, that the sinfulness of humans, like the attempt to stop things and snuff things out and stifle them, ultimately ends up being your undoing. But nowhere is it more true than in the Christian faith, where time and time again Christians are persecuted and killed and oppressed, and somehow God keeps working through them. Like they just multiply. They just keep springing up, you know. There's an old expression, church fathers, probably more than one, maybe Tertullian, I think, said it. The blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church. Something along those lines, I'm paraphrasing. That go ahead, have at us. You can't really stop us because Jesus is king over you. God has made him king and has put him at his right hand. And so you can try as much as you want to stop it. All it will do is help unfold his plan. There's power in that, real power in that. And oppressed people around the world and throughout history have found incredible power in that. So, and this little baby boy is doing it all, driving Herod nuts. And I think we miss that because we are in a world that emphasizes the great and the powerful and the mighty. And I think there's a section in there about, we expect somebody big to come from New York or LA or whatever. We expect all these great people to come from great things. And yet Jesus is born in Bethlehem. He's born in the stable, these humble beginnings and all that. But even beyond that, we think it's going to come through a political party or a politician who is very gifted, or a government, the nation that is the United States or some other nation, right? That all these great, big, powerful, scary, intimidating things are how God is going to work in the world. And actually, it turns out he works in these tiny little, small, seemingly insignificant ways, seemingly insignificant people, seemingly insignificant places. Like, the heck is Slidell? Nothing. And yet, God could use Slidell mightily. Who are you? Who am I?
The Bethlehem of Louisiana.
The Bethlehem of Louisiana. Maybe. I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's Bogalusa or Pearl River. Or
right.
Maybe there's another Bethlehem of Louisiana, small, little, insignificant place. But, yeah, that's where God does this stuff. Can anything good come from Nazareth? Nathaniel says as he's learning about Jesus. That's where Jesus comes. This despised place. And we want all these big things. What if it's just, not even Slidell so much, but just like you as a person? Like it starts with you. It starts with a simple act of kindness or generosity or a small little idea. And then all of a sudden it's boom, like it's everywhere. That's how change, I think, actually happens. That's how this kingdom takes over, and very few people seem to get that. We are all fighting for the top of the pile, be the king of the hill, in the worldly sense of it. But Jesus did not. He didn't do that. He didn't go straight to the top. He didn't go to New York. He didn't go to London or Paris or, he didn't go to any of these places. He went to Bethlehem. And he fled to Egypt, and then he comes back to Nazareth. It's the shepherds. It's the wise men. It's these people that shouldn't get it, that do get it. It's people that God reveals it to, not people who figure it all out on their own. The people who figure it all out on their own are trying to suppress it, right? So, or I don't know if they actually figure it all out on their own, but the people that seem to kind of get it or have the wherewithal to get it try to keep it a secret. Great things happen when we dream small. Right? The kingdom of heaven is like a little leaven that a woman put into some dough until it was through the whole lump. That's the kingdom of heaven. Not these big, impressive, great and mighty ways, So, and back to, our own, we are also like that. God, Jesus, we started down this road, but Jesus is a threat to our autonomy. There's a guy, actually, Tim Keller references him quite a bit. I think it's Aldous Huxley wrote Brave New World or 1984 or one of those
Brave New World,
dystopian.
I think. Yeah.
And he says something like about his lack of faith or lack of Christianity. He says, "I'm not unbiased. I am totally biased. And anyone who comes to this conclusion of atheism or, non-faith, has to be honest about that too. I basically ditched my faith because I wanted to sleep with whoever I wanted to. I didn't want to have a God tell me what I can and cannot do. Yeah, we want to be kings of our own lives and of whatever it is that we can see and control. And Jesus comes along and says, "No, you're not the king, I am. Here's what I say. You heard it said, I say to you." He even rewrites basically or reinterprets the Old Testament law that the Jews have been holding up as sacred for thousands of years. Yeah. But so how is it that God is trying to rule and reign in our lives and we're saying, nope, no, no, no? Comes to our jobs, our finances, our family, our kids, our grandkids, our time, our church participation or lack thereof, our whatever. I mean, there's 1,000 things. How we handle a particular situation, an illness, a neighbor, a family member. God wants to be king. God is king. He sent Jesus to rule and reign and put him at his right hand. That's the way forward. I mean, that's the threat to the kingdoms of this world. Those are the things that actually, you want to know why the church seems to lack power sometimes. I think it's because we have made this deal with the devil, essentially. It's incredible compromise to try to partner with power in all different ways and keep it. And so we don't see the same kind of power that we might otherwise. I think we should be a threat to it like Christians often have been. Not by being jerks. There are a lot of people that will say that and then they go out and do the least Christian thing ever. It's like, no. No political cause is your cause. Like, the cause of Christ is the cause of Christ. It's not the cause of a political party or a politician. And the fact that we constantly go back to that, that's our problem. It is literally irrelevant. Like, the people that get the most airtime and the most attention for good and bad reasons, whatever the reasons are, and they are the least important people on the planet. And we think, and we are led to think, that they are the most important person on the planet. This is a small example. I mean, people look at, like, I am not a magi or a shepherd in a sense, right? I'm a pastor. I'm one of these guys that's supposed to know. That you ask and then they pull out the book and, oh yeah, it's right here. Here it is. Like, but that doesn't mean I'm the guy, right? And people will say, well, if I could just get you to meet so and so, you could really convince them. Maybe then they would actually come to church. Or maybe then this, or maybe. And it's like, no, actually, they will never listen to me. Don't you get it? This is the upside down kingdom. It's you. It's your story. It's your relationship and the relational capital that you've built over months, years, decades. That's what does it. And so you see, like, it's not shooting for the top. It's right. And that's just a small thing because I'm just the church, right? But we look at, if we can just have a president, if we can just have Congress, the Senate, governorships, whatever. And certainly there are real practical things that happen as a result of those things, but keep in mind the bigger picture, that they may seek to undermine the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, but they ultimately can't help but serve the purposes of the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, because that's just what he does. Like he just does, whether they want to or not, whether they realize it or not, whether we realize it or not. He just does. And sometimes I think this is all really, it's just we want life to be a certain way, or we want to feel like we are in control. And so we get ourselves wrapped up in all this stuff. So, yeah. Nuts.
It's a mess.
It is. And that's us living in denial, basically. Living in denial that we aren't part of the problem, that we aren't trying to overthrow the king, right? And yet we are. We are. Every day. We want to be in charge. We want to have a say. We want to be in control. And we're not. And we never will be. And we weren't even smart enough to figure this whole thing out. God had to reveal it to us.
I can't even get the people at my house to load the dishwasher the way I want them to. That's when I realized I have no control or no power, absolutely. So there. How about that as being an insignificant thing?
Well, there is a way to exercise power and control, but, you probably don't really want the results of that. I mean, like there are other effects that result from that. So,
and I don't have the power over something so insignificant as that.
Yeah.
So how can I have control over anything really significant, right?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that's the illusion of politics and like our ability to vote and be a part of the process. It is the least evil of all choices. It's the best option we've got. It disperses power. And yet there's also a subtle temptation of Satan for us to be, living with these delusions of grandeur about ourselves. That I can change everything, and that's Herod. And forget politics, right? What about this incredible evil that befalls this small village, this little little town of Bethlehem, and the wailing of mothers and fathers at the death of their 2-year-old and under children. I shared this morning at church this, I forget exactly what it was, paraphrasing it, but a preacher was saying they knew a person that had heard that story for the first time, and their response was, that's the kind of God you want? A God who saves his own kid but not yours? And, those are the unpleasant things that church people don't usually want to think about or talk about, but that are very much on the minds of people that aren't here.
All right.
We'd rather just do Jesus, forgiveness, he loves you, yay, eternal life, heaven, whoa. We just want to stay there and gloss over the immense pain and grief and evil and injustice and whatever that exists in the world. Trouble, of course, is that they all use, not all, but it's often used as an excuse, right? I'm not going to believe in a God like that. Up yours, God. I don't want anything to do with you.
Like somehow they could come up with a better plan.
Exactly, right? So they are just doing the Herod thing. I want to stay king. As if that will somehow make them immune. Right? Like, life is still going to suck. You're just robbing yourself of the actual peace and joy and comfort that you could have in it. And I mean, it's very obvious that that is, in fact, the case. The less religious, in general, just the less religious culture becomes, but in particular, the less Christian it is, the more anxiety, the more depression, the more we aren't handling life well. We want it to be a certain way. It's not that way. But instead of the comfort and hope of the gospel, we look for comfort and hope in all kinds of other things. Like, I remember seeing, I probably mentioned this once a long time ago, but I saw this like Instagram reel, I think it was. This woman who was like trying to counsel people who were dealing with anxiety. And she's like, just spend a moment and think about this. In 5 billion years, the sun will explode. Your ashes and your bones and whatever, like, will just all turn to dust and be vaporized. Turn to stardust or whatever the heck, how she said it. And so consider this thing that you're all worried about. It literally doesn't matter, you know? Meanwhile, what she just said is that nothing matters ever. That's nihilism.
Yeah.
That's so back to thinking, which we talked about, which was one of the shorts that actually did pretty well. Thinking about things as a Christian really helps, because you think about this and you say, if you're trying to do the right thing in a tough situation, you're worried about the consequences, you can say, no, this does matter. And one day, 5 billion years from now, I'll be in a place with God, living eternally forever in bliss, paradise, joy, peace, unending. And I'll have a reward for doing the right thing, no matter what happens to me right now. Or at the very least, you know, I'm dealing with this painful, difficult situation, but I have the peace of knowing, I have the hope and joy of knowing that it's not the final thing. All right, so just carrying a burden.
Or if you're the kind of person that's always worried about maybe you're going to get there, but all these other people that won't, you have that opportunity right now to try to
help
help them, talk
Yeah.
to them, and
be a witness, do the right thing, show your faith. On the other hand, if you don't believe in Jesus and you do believe that everything is just going to explode into a ball of fire with nothing ever mattering ever, that's nihilism. That's depressing. And in fact, more and more atheists are actually being honest about that and saying, essentially, you really have to not think about this because it is kind of depressing and nihilistic. And you have to just do good because life is just better that way. You know, and evolution has taught us that, and blah, blah, blah. And they come up with all these things, but essentially they say, yeah, don't think so hard. Don't be one of these Scandinavian philosophers or whatever that dwell on all these depressing thoughts and ideas. So much for Christians being the ones who don't think. Yeah. Any other thoughts or questions on The wise guys.
Yeah, there's always more questions, but I don't even thought of them yet. So there. So no more questions today.
All right. Well, a good place to stop. We will not be meeting this Wednesday, or I don't know, maybe the next Wednesday we'll be back at it, but taking a break for the holidays, and we'll catch you when we get back. Maybe get back to our parables or something new, actually. I don't know. We'll see. We do have to finish the parables. But also want to take a look at this book right here, Open Arms, Connecting People to Jesus. And don't forget the Tales of Nola. Actually, Nobody's Nola made it into this reel at some shelter in Houston. I was like, oh, man. Did I send you that?
No.
Yeah, so I put it up as my story. There was some random shelter in Houston that there's a dog with a woman who I guess works at the shelter or volunteers at the shelter or something like that. And the dog is opening up this box and it's going nuts because it's got treats in there. But apparently this box from Amazon, they ordered a bunch of stuff. But there was also in the box a copy of Nobody's Nola.
Wow.
I think it was Friends for Life or something like that. Was the name of the place or the name of the account on Instagram. So check it out. Nola's getting famous. A little bit at a time, And support Open Arms, support us, support Sweet Jesus. Taste and see that the Lord is good. Ice cream is sweet. Jesus is sweeter. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. And we'll see you after Epiphany, after the wise men actually show up.
Okay. Fast forward 2 years, huh?
Mm-hmm. Time travel. Wonderful.